trial running. Sorry for the creakiness of this chair. I found it in the top floor of the loft in 1977's The Sentinel. I should uh, I should get some updated references, I think. But the catalog of references, it runs too deep, and I've never been one to care too much if somebody gets me. You feel me? How many? I had to succumb. It's time for the pod. And hey, this isn't the first go around. I've been trial running pods dating back to 2015. It's probably good those aren't out there. I don't think they'd reflect well on me currently. Not that I was throwing out slurs, not that I wasn't. But thinking back to that, damn, I remember running a couple pods with my buddy Axel back in Denver. I hope he's well. And I was still drinking at that time, which is amazing to think about because I have 9 years sober. And I'll give myself praise for that because my family won't. Sneak dissers. Sometimes it be the ones closest to you who are the sneak dissers and the monitoring spirits. I'm not naive. I've been around. I've been in this game 18 years. And that's not even an exaggeration, unfortunately. Some of you are my YouTube audience on here. And disturbingly, but I say graciously, some of you have been here since I was a child, 15 years old. And I'm currently 33. If you just know me from YouTube, you're not aware that all my creative attention goes to IG and TikTok, for better or for worse. That's where I do all my bits and things. I would imagine that's where most people are coming from, if anyone's listening. But it was time to do it. I like doing bits and creative comedy. And every year or 2 years, I think I'm of the firm belief podcasting's on its last leg. I'm like, there's no way these minimally talented guys who talk for 2 hours at a time, they've exhausted all their stories. They're not inherently talented. They're running dry, but it keeps going. And more pods keep coming up. But here's the issue with the game. There was no Gursk previously. And hey, I'm sorry. I'm wearing some moisturizer with SPF. I kind of look like a what do you call that? A gay person? No, a mime. Only kidding. Come on. Let me take a sip of my little cortado here. They gave me it in the fucking puppuccino cup. Like I'm a dog. They treat me like I'm a dog. That's how I feel. They're kicking me like I'm a fucking basset hound with a limp leg. And that's the thing today. I got to get real. I got to get raw and real. And if there were two words to describe me, that's what people would say. Maybe gaunt also. Maybe unwell. But I think above those, raw and real. Who keeping it realer? And listen, here's what's harmful to me internally about just doing the bits online, just doing like the goofy bits. My life has been a hell of a trip. Not that everyone's hasn't. I'm not disregarding your experience. Some of us have not had it as easy as others. And I had to get real today. I really did. Because it's eating away at my soul. I'm battling spiritual warfare every day out here in Los Angeles, where I've been for 2 years. And I'm not going to talk ish on the region. I think that's very goofy to move to LA and just, talk negatively about every aspect. One could. They wouldn't be wrong. But I've tried to give the benefit of the doubt and be grateful. And this was not my first go around in Los Angeles. But let's start from the beginning. I was born severely premature, 3 pounds, to a 42-year-old mother. My parents were both 42 years old, which is, it was abnormally older than the rest of the kids' parents my age, and I heard about it. Once you hit that point in like elementary school and your parents come in volunteering for things, my parents didn't too much because they were pretty cold and hands off and like, you're a kid, you don't know shit, be quiet. My parents were not ones to like defend us. If I came home in trouble from school, my mom would be like, "What'd you do, you little cretin?" It was not like, "Oh, we have to go in and defend you at the school." It was like hit with a wet dish rag, cigarette on the no burnt cigarettes on the arm that I remember. But the paddle came out. So okay, my mother, 42 when she had me. She had a stillborn son. I would have a brother, John Henry Gursky. I'm Michael John Gursky. John Henry would have been like 47 now? Something like that. So my mom had a stillborn son. Then she had 7 miscarriages. So the doc was like, "You're not going to be able to have kids, Susan." We had an Indian doctor. So they went and adopted my sister, my oldest sister. 2 years later, adopted my other sister. And then 2 years after that, along came me, the surprise. And my mother smoked cigs while she was pregnant. I asked her when her mind was there many years ago, I asked her, "Why'd you do that, Mom? Why did you smoke while pregnant with me?" And she's like, "I didn't think I would even be able to have you, Mike." I'm like, "Well, that's really careful logic you've applied to the situation there." And I love her. God bless. She hasn't known me in years. Her mind is gone. We'll skip past. We'll save all of my teen stories and drinking stories and all that for the course of a lifetime. Because growing up in the woods of eastern Pennsylvania, outside Allentown, an hour north of Philly, an hour and a half from New York, it was real out there in them woods in the hills. We were in the sticks, as they say. We were hill people, and by the time I was, in elementary, middle school, like there were 3 older guys in my neighborhood selling heroin. It was it was a rough place to grow up, even though, we weren't hurting for cash, but also you don't go to the woods of Pennsylvania like that if you have crazy money. We did all right. And I'm not going to get into my college experience either. I'm jumping to. No, wait. Sorry. I'm scattered. I've been so financially stressed, and my life has shaken up drastically over the last 2 months. Like a lot of forced change at once. They say blessings are on the other side of it. By they, I mean black preachers on TikTok. And I've been trying to not delve too much into TikTok lately because I'm trying to prevent schizophrenia. I'm not trying to encourage. Where was I? Okay, 17, my mom's diagnosed with early onset dementia. That begins with memory issues. That's where it started. And I'm a teen boy. I'm struggling at that time already, had just started drinking and was already off to the races. I knew there was a problem. I knew I didn't drink as others did. What clicked for me the first evening I got drunk, when it hit me, I viewed it as a solution. I was this terrified, but very, of course, creative kid. And then all of a sudden, when I drank, I was like, oh my God, this horrible anxiety and fear that walks with me everywhere and prevents me from being me, it shut off. And I'm like, oh my God, when I drink cheap vodka, I could be myself and I could talk to gals. Not healthy. I go off to college. I had an unorthodox experience. Left my first university, came home to a different school to finish that while living at home, although there was no semblance of like a childhood home left. I'm living alone with my mother as her mind's rapidly deteriorating. I'm trying to get sober. I'm trying to finish school. I'm just trying to finish off my degree. And then I'm living at home alone with my mom as at that point, it had gone from the memory issues to very bizarre behaviors, bringing up these strange, insignificant memories from like her nursing school days and such. It was eerie, it was dark, but I managed to finish school, and right as it was coming graduation time, my best childhood friend Whitey passed away. And I bring that up. Now, by this point, I've had like a very an abnormal of friends pass away. In the early days, it's like, the overdoses, the reckless accidents. But, at my age, it started to become like I wasn't taking my heart medication. That scares me, even though I'm a fucking spry young guy. I'm still sprouting my first nipple hairs and still getting acne and all that. Maybe a good sign. Could also be Lucifer, but who knows? Nah, I'm walking with God. I'm walking in light. We'll get back to that. That'll that'll tie back in. But I'll never forget this because I was hanging with Whitey. I had rekindled friendship with Whitey when I got home from my first university. Whitey was from the neighborhood. And when I arrived back from my first university, of course, like the guys who were out there trying to further themselves, they weren't in the neighborhood anymore. They were away at school. So I reconnected with the guys who were still around. I was trying to get sober from alcohol at this point. I was in AA going to rooms, and I'd put together, like, 3 months no drinking, and then being like 21, 22 years old. It was very hard to be in the day, taking it a day at a time. You're thinking long term, how am I never going to drink again? That's an insane concept. Um, but I was staying sober from alcohol and struggling with the weed still. So, Whitey and I would get together and smoke weed. And the night before Whitey passed, I was over at his apartment. And I remember vividly him saying to me, Gursky, I know your parents don't like me, but I'm going to be there next week at your college graduation, beer in hand, rooting you on. And that night when I left Whitey's house, I I'm not gonna speak as though I'm clairvoyant and say I had an eerie feeling, but the next morning, the guy who was with me, my buddy Chris, who was at Whitey's house with me the night before, he knocks on the door, and we lived in the woods in Pennsylvania. No one knocked on the door or rang. Everyone where I come from had like a sign at the end of the driveway that was like, "My other dog is a gun. No trespassing." It was not like friendly walk on someone's property type territory. So I'm like, who's ringing the doorbell? The Jehovah's? Get the AR. No, and it was Chris, and he's like, dude, Whitey died. And the day of Whitey's viewing, what happened to be a week from then, which was the day of my college graduation. It was strange. It was emotionally heavy. And a week after that, I was shipped off to Denver, Colorado. I don't say that ungratefully because, I mean, going to Denver, Colorado from eastern Pennsylvania, that's a place people aspire to go. Mostly like potheads and women who hula hoop, but a lot of people like save up and they're like, I'm moving to Denver. But for me, I had never seen it. At that point in my life, graduating college, I had never been west of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. When you're in like the Philly, Jersey area, you kind of just stay around there. I'd go as far up as like New Hampshire for soccer tournaments, and then we'd go down to Delaware, to the shore. But we just stayed in that pocket of the Northeast. I never even drove entirely through PA, like to Pittsburgh and shit. But as the story goes, my oldest sister had lived in Denver for some years. The plan was when I graduated college, we had to move my mother into assisted living. So my father, God bless him, he's a cold man who, sorry, Dad, for saying this. Honestly, I don't think I'm telling out of school tales here. He was like, Mike, there's no home for you to be at when you graduate school. You got to find somewhere to go. And I was, again, like newly getting sober, a young guy. You miss some stages of development in your like active addiction, your active drinking years. So I was just applying for writing work in New York, like thinking big. I'm like, well, I hate Vice, but they'll give me a job or something like that. And then as graduation neared, I get a call from my oldest sister. And she's like, Mike, I talked with Dad. I know you need somewhere to live. I'm getting a new apartment. And Dad and I have arranged that you're coming to live with me. I'm like, well, I'm glad my life is being orchestrated by others. But again, I'm like, cool, I suppose. And then next thing you know, a month after graduating college, I'm on a flight out to Denver, where I had never seen, where I had never been. And I I was grateful, I was blown away, I was culture shocked and confused. Again, young man coming from the Philly area, arriving out in Colorado, I was kind of that harshly judgmental, closed minded kind of East Coast guy where I get there and I'm like, damn, everyone's goofy. What a bunch of airheads. No one's talking honestly here. I just used to remark how different everything was. And anything that looked slightly like old, like the East Coast, I'm like, that looks like Philly. And people are like, dude, that's a recycling bin. But, and then, of course, my sister, I didn't know anyone there. I didn't have roots. My sister was the only person I knew there when I moved to Colorado, like a fresh, trying to get sober young man. Of course, inevitably arriving in Denver, night two, my sister presented me with a bowl to smoke some bud. I'm like, yeah, yeah. So I was back to smoking bud. But like 2 months into living there, her being the only person I know, I was working at Ross Dress for Less at the time with a college degree and all this talent. But I was in a fear based mindset where my parents had instilled in me, you just take a job. And I didn't have resources there. There were a lot of things I had not been taught at the time. Getting an apartment, taxes, a lot of very practical adult things that I skipped over, no one showed me. And then when I'd ask my family, it jumped right to like, Mike, you're an adult man. What are you, an idiot? And I'm like, well, no one walked me through it, and it'd be kind if you would. But yeah, let's take this approach. Let's guilt me. Um, yes, we're into it. And so, yeah, I started working at Ross Dress for Less because I had worked a lot of retail in my college years, like Polo, J. Crew, Aeropostale. I love clothes. And to me, I'm like, well, I liked shopping at Ross when I was younger. I didn't really contextualize me being in that environment. And I've worked, I don't know how many jobs in places you won't believe. Other stories I'll get into, but I do remember that interview process. My manager was, she was like a Bulgarian woman named Olga or something. She was a nice lady. We're not going to get into her appearance. Stop asking. And I remember during that interview, someone always asks you the question, "Why do you want to work here?" And it wasn't phrased like that. Oh. It wasn't phrased like that. Sorry, my screensaver came on and I got frightened we'd lose all this gold. But Olga, if that was her name, or Corsula or whatever the hell it was, she was like, "Why do you want to work here?" And I knew what she was saying. I'm like, she's like, damn, an eloquent, like, nice guy who's maybe not half bad looking. He looks odd, but he's not half bad looking. What's he doing at Ross? Where everyone's like either 80 or, well, we're not going to get into it because I need to refrain sometimes. This is partly why I've refrained from a pod for so long. I just say things. That's a part of what I do. And everything sounds very sincere. That's also, I'm not going to give away any sauce, but it's part of my delivery. So people take things very seriously. Um, so I'm working at Raw Stress for Less, and for a period, they wanted me to be loss prevention guy when other people had just been fired. They're like, Michael, we need you in loss prevention. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna be a fake cop who like follows people around making sure they're not stealing stained Tommy Hilfiger briefs. It's not gonna happen. But 2 months in, my sister, the only person I know, she's like, Mike, I'm moving for a guy. I'm sorry. I'm like, okay. So then I'm just like there in Denver working at Ross, and I never stop pushing with the comedy. I never gave up. At that time, I had like a little cult fan base on Vine. And I wish to this day I had all those Vines because some were very good. And for years after the fact, people would message me on other apps like Twitter and shit. And they'd be like, Gursky, do you have that Vine with like the black stepdad at the carnival? And I'm like, I'm not even sure which one you're referring to, but it means a lot. You remember that. I made stupid mistakes with old YouTube when I was a kid and Vine with like deleting things and then wishing it were back. Um, but then at the time, it resembles my TikTok comments now. My Vine comments just became, "Why don't you have 1 million followers, Gursky? Gursky, you're criminally underrated. Why aren't you big?" And those can be motivating and encouraging and validating, but you have to understand how frustrating that is as a guy who's been doing this forever and like had little audiences. But like it becomes like, hey, I don't know. That's in your hands, that's in the universe's hands, and that became all my Vine comments. My point was I was uh I was on Vine doing my thing. I think making occasional good shit. I was writing for some magazines and stuff for some extra money, and I was working at Rose. And then I moved from Rose to Banana Republic. And hey, I liked Banana, and I like their clothes to this day. I didn't necessarily love working in the Lone Tree Mall. Or no, what the hell was it? The Park Meadows Mall in Lone Tree, Colorado. I didn't like. I should know. I should know. I haven't had a car my whole adult life. And in cities that I've lived in, like Philly and Chicago, that's, well, not so much Philly. You don't want to take too many buses in Philly. I think we'll do a whole episode on my Philly public transit stories. But Chicago, that was great. I love the accessibility in public transit there. Chicago has it figured out. That was my home away from home, but we didn't get there yet. We're still in Denver, Colorado. I'm taking public transit and shit out to a mall job and doing stand up occasionally. You have to understand when I was like 23, showing up alone to open mics in Denver, the stand up scene isn't particularly welcoming anywhere, but my God. And I don't even care if I talk shit right now. I cannot even express to you how unwelcoming, clicky, and bizarre the Denver open mic scene was in 2015. I used to show up to these mics alone, not knowing anyone, and I'd be friendly, and guys would not speak to me. And what really bewildered me, I didn't put it together at the time because I was like not fully believing in myself. But I would go up and I would try shit. And these are all guys who knew one another. They frequented the same mics, doing the same jokes night after night. And it's just because, like, oh, a guy we don't know, immediately we're standoffish. And then I'd go up and everyone bombed a lot. You know, that's how it goes, especially at the most unsupportive mics on the planet in Denver. These guys who knew the host would get up first, and then they'd go walk away and smoke weed and talk amongst their friends. No one supported one another. So by the time I'd be put up, because the host wasn't familiar with me, I'd be like 30th. There'd be two people arms crossed staring at me. But I will say, despite that and how unwelcoming it was, every mic, particularly when I just riff or talk, like I was getting laughs. But then, like the mic host would be a dick. They'd make like a snide remark about me after, and I used to like be hurt by that and think like, damn, do I like suck? I think I have a lot of good shit. A lot of these guys suck. It didn't occur to me until years later. I'm like, oh, those guys were like really insecure and threatened. But like, yeah, some stuff as simple as this one mic, it was in like a barcade situation, which could describe almost anywhere in Denver. A lot of a lot of pinball machines, but it was like this barcade kind of mic. And when I got up, first there was these guys in like leather jackets who were trying to look straight out of the 80s that were just hanging out by pinball machines as guys in leather jackets carrying metal objects do. And so note them, and then note the guy before me. He it, he was this middle-aged black dude, and a lot of his jokes like did not make any sense. Like they were formatted right, and then he'd get to the punchline that like made no sense, and it'd be silent, and then he'd go ha ha after everything. He'd be like, and then your girl step out on you, ha ha, and I thought that was funny. So I got up, and first I was looking at the guys by the pinball machines, and I'm like, everybody, we have some celebrity appearances in the building tonight. We got the villains from RoboCop too, and those guys appreciated that. Thank God, because I thought I would potentially be like shanked or shot up with like a synthetic drug against my will. And then I would say my jokes, and people would stare at me like they do. So, kind of awkwardly, I would go, ha ha, just kind of like I thought it was funny to do my own version of what the last guy did. And when I got off, the host gets up and he goes, "Okay, that's what we call stealing someone else's act." And I'm like, "You're either stupid or naive that you think that's stealing and you don't understand what I was doing." And some others found it funny, just not your fat insecure ass. Anyhow, enough about my bitterness there. I'm telling you how I'm like this struggling guy, and at the time was like still smoking weed and like doing what I had to. I did not stop pushing with the comedy even when I was broke. And I sold my whole DVD collection, which I cherished. Oh my goodness, you wouldn't have believed it. Any obscure 80s comedy, any obscure 70s horror, and like old 70s, 80s B movie action thrillers. I had a hell of a DVD collection I searched far and wide for. But it became this thing of like, I'm working at Banana Republic making minimum wage. I can't get off pot at the time. And I know this sounds like heroin addict shit, but I was walking 2 miles down Colorado Boulevard with a bin of DVDs going to this place, Second Spin, which I miss to this day. I don't think it exists any longer. They would buy and sell DVDs, and they had a hell of a collection, especially for a horror head like myself. But I was like a heroin addict walking miles with DVDs to sell DVDs to make a couple of bucks to get McDonald's and like a dub and a gram of bud. It was a very sad situation. I'm not looking for pity here. I'm telling you the real shit, the life of Gursk. Let me take a sip of my puppuccino. Mm-hmm. I should eat something soon too, but we can't right now. We're in motion. I could do this for hours. It's a shame I've been keeping you from this. For a brief period in Colorado, this is a long story that I can't get into the details of because I don't want to hurt anyone. But I had an old college roommate and buddy who lived in LA now at this time. This was 2016, sorry. I had been in Denver confused and trying and struggling for almost a year now. And this guy reaches out. He's like, dude, move to LA with me. I'm trying to fill a room. And I'm like, that's wonderful, man, but I have no money and no idea what I'm even doing in Denver. And I have my family, they're a whole other story. They went, I didn't, I didn't, aside from causing anxiety and worry, I didn't hurt them. I was nice and trying. And I didn't steal from them or anything like that, but I'm alone in Denver and I would try to like confide in them, talk to them, and they took this very hands-off policy of like we're not even talking to you. We don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear about your problems. Um it's strange to this day, but better. And so he's like, "Come on out to LA." And I'm like, "Dude, I don't know what to do." But I made it happen. And now this is a younger me, a more naive me in 2016 arriving in LA. I was there for a grand total of a month. And financially terrified every moment. I was like, I tried all day, every day to just get a basic ass job. I'm talking like bakeries, coffee shops, retail stores. Your mom, sorry. And what I learned quickly, I'm like, what the fuck? No matter how capable you are, even the most shit jobs in Los Angeles are competitive, and it's demeaning. So then I'm just like writing as much as possible, trying to make some coin. And after some time sober, LA is actually where I drank again. And the last place I drank in 2016, God bless. But I like it was like mid-month in LA or something, and I saw some like vodka in the fridge that a roommate had, and I started drinking for like just a couple of days, and then I got my ass back in AA, and it's been sober since. But as it neared the end of the month in Los Angeles, it was coming up, and I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna pay $1,000 rent for like a shitty 3 bedroom with other guys. This is 2016. That was kind of a big chunk for rent at that time. And I didn't have anyone to turn to. Like I said, family had shut off. They didn't want to hear it, and they certainly weren't going to give a handout. And this is dark. I'm sorry, but I'm telling you like it is. It's like 3 days before April, and rent's coming up. I haven't found work. I haven't made much money. My mind, instead of, and this is kind of what's happened for me, and I'm sure others experience, once you've cut out like booze or like whatever your drugs are, and you're just facing reality, and you're amidst great stress and financial stress, as if you know, if you've like starved, if you've not known where your next check's coming from, and I've been there too many times, it takes you to like an insane place where you might not be depressed and suicidal, but that's where I go. And I didn't drive, of course, I didn't have a car. That was one of my many mistakes, going to LA without a car like an idiot. I I had never been up in the hills, like Griffith Park and all that. I hadn't seen much in LA because I wasn't mobile. So my mind goes to I'm gonna walk up in the hills and look for a place to jump. And I meant it. And I'm sorry, this is just reality. And as I walked, I would take a stop every now and then because I'm walking for miles. And I'd stop and just start writing this note. I was like writing this really half assed, self indulgent note about ending shit. And finally, I get up into the hills and I see a spot. And I go look down at the edge. And then I'm not I'm not being phony here. Then the voice of God comes in my head and he says, "Call Al." And Al, um, God rest Al's soul, he was my first AA sponsor when I first started going to Alcoholics Anonymous at 21 in Bethlehem in Allentown, PA. Al was, at the time of meeting him, 68 or 69, like my father's age, and I was a 21-year-old kid, but we clicked on so much. Al was the most wonderful guy. He was cool, he was sharp dressed, he was a realtor, he was funny, and Al really tried for me when I was a 21-year-old kid. And throughout my time since moving to Denver, since leaving PA, Al and I would talk occasionally, and I hadn't spoken to him for several months. But when I was standing there at this ledge ready to do it, I get this voice that says, "Call Al." So I step back from the ledge, my friend, and I called Al, and he picked up, and I told him the situation and where I was. And he's like, "Well, do you have a sponsor out there in LA?" And I said, "Yeah." And I'm not going to like throw him out there, his name out there or anything, but he's like, "Call him." And then call me back. And I called my LA sponsor, and he was like, "Hey, I'm at an audition right now, but I'll come get you when I'm done." And he did, and he took me to this diner. And I remember being at this diner. I had just like, put on clothes to go walk up in the hills and jump. So I was wearing a pair of sweatpants, these Umbro sweatpants. And I'll never forget my sponsor at the time. He's looking at me. We're at this diner, and he's like, "You were going to kill yourself in some Umbros?" And I thought that was funny. And he couldn't believe, like, over money, over $1,000. But you don't understand how many times I've been in this, like, position. And I've always done what I've had to, showing up to the craziest jobs to keep going. And at that diner that day, I saw Steve-O. Um, now I don't ride with Steve-O. He's like, "Hey, let me show you this new ass supplement I'm selling." Everything's like a sale with him now. He's like, "Let me sell these electronic anal beads." But I knew at that time he was like a publicly sober guy. Man, the Steve-O impression's killing my throat chakra. Um, and I thought it was meaningful to see this guy who was like publicly sober. I didn't say anything to him, but that spoke to me in some way universally. So some things went down. There was like a falling out and some weird shit with that guy, and I took a Greyhound bus back to Denver, Colorado from LA after a month of living there. Um, and That Greyhound trip was insane. Imagine being on a Greyhound bus from Los Angeles to Denver, and the first stop is Vegas. And yeah, I never really told much of that Greyhound story, but there was no AC on the bus, and for the first like 20 minutes of the bus ride on this Greyhound, there's this woman in the back just repeatedly going, "Hey, motherfucker, we hot back her. Motherfucker, we hot back her." And then whoever you're picturing, whoever you're envisioning in your head this woman to be, you're correct. And then it finally, like 20 minutes in, the bus driver just goes, "Shut the fuck up." and she did. And I had to sit next to a man who he was a coke dealer from Brooklyn. This wasn't I wasn't uh, assuming. He told me, and he talked to me about aliens for several hours, and how I didn't know this was where it was gonna go. He it started off with we're riding through like Utah or Arizona, and it's just rocks and dirt. One thing, I am a thoroughly pretty northeast guy who grew up in the woods. I am very ill at ease in the desert climate. And when it becomes just rocks and dirt for hours, I feel spiritually off and frightened. And I've done that trek numerous times. I've trekked the whole country by car. And I don't know what disturbs me more: Iowa, Kansas, that region, just like straight away, no hills, just corn, or rocks and dirt in Arizona. They both disturb me. But this guy's talking to me. We're making conversation, and he's pointing out the rocks. And he's like, you see that formation on that rock there? Like, he's like, that that wasn't like that wasn't made by man. So I'm thinking like, oh, he's talking about God. This is a spiritual discussion. He's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, no, like man didn't make those rocks. And he's like, yeah, that looked like a laser beam hit it. And then he got into the alien discussion for hours. And at the time, I thought he had coke induced schizophrenia. But now, uh, I think that guy was telling the truth. He was pointing at my iPhone and he's like, this billion-year-old technology. We've been had this technology for billions of years. I don't think he's off base. And then throughout that ride, the driver did not change the toilet. He did not empty the sewage through these at any of our stops. And there was no AC or ventilation. So for the last maybe like 6 hours, it just reeked of shit on this Greyhound bus. And there's one girl who's like withdrawing from opiates, just bitching, yelling, and then the coke dealer Brooklyn guy, my buddy, starts just talking shit to her. He's like, "Hey, shut the fuck up and get off them pills." It was crazy, and I thought there was going to be a fight. And last stop was Grand Junction, Colorado, where we had to wait for like, I don't know, 2 hours, and then back to Denver. And since Denver, I did go back to Philly for a year, where I lived in halfway houses, and those are stories for another day. That's another pod. Left ear ringing. Someone talking about me. Someone talking about me. Who? Could be anybody. They all empty speculators. But we're fast forwarding though. I'm in Philly for a year. It was not going well. It was very hard to be motivated when I was around what I was around. But again, I kept it going. I've always rapped on and off. That year back in Philly, I couldn't help but be very rap focused. And like, of course, comedic rap, but I wasn't as into the comedy. That was just Philly influence and being back there. Then, after a year in Philly, it was not working out. My sister was back in Colorado because it didn't work out with the guy. Sorry to put your business out there, but you've talked about me endlessly, so I could say real shit. And she is like, "Hey, Mike, I hear it's not working out in Philly. Do you want to try Denver again?" So then, this is end of 2017. I moved back to Denver. And then I was on to Chicago. And I got a lot to say about these places, of course, but I'm right now, this is kind of like general outline and where I'm getting to. And this does feel like self-indulgent and crazy, but you got to understand, on Instagram and TikTok, I have a lot of fans who I'm grateful for. And this happened 3 years ago now. The blow up, that is, where like I've been doing this forever for very few people, putting bits out there, writing jokes. And I know that's very foreign in this day and age where people are like, I've been posting TikToks for 2 months. Why am I not famous? Why am I not making a living off this? Try 14 years before any sizable audience even cared. And try 14 years before 15 before you made a dime. And I still haven't made very much money. I've had to stay in these like low level customer service jobs, which feels very self sabotaging, but I just closed off other paths gradually over time because I believe in me as a writer, me as a voice actor, me as a hip hop dancer, me as a, well, I don't even need to say. Oh, so now we're fast forwarding to 2022, the blow up. I'm in Chicago. I loved Chicago. Like I said, that was my home away from home. That's my favorite big city in this country. I enjoyed life there. Things came together for me there. I was in a relationship the whole time there that did not end up working out, and I have nothing negative to say about that, but I invested all of my life and money in that relationship and it did not work out. And during that time, 2022 in June, I hit on a couple series. I started a couple new series on TikTok. I had been posting on there a little while because people were mad at me that I wasn't. I don't know even how to be grammatically correct currently. But like all, fans from Vine and everything else were like, dude, I know you think this TikTok shit is odd, but you got to get on there. And I was posting for a long time on there before I hit on a couple series that worked. I did the young people voices. That was the first video that really blew up. I did these young kids in a thrift store, based on true things, because I've been a thrifter my whole life. That's what my mother and I did. She was a cheap Slovak woman and a hoarder who loved clothes and furniture, so all we did was go to these authentic old flea markets in eastern Pennsylvania and in yard sales and thrift stores. And that became me. So I was in Goodwill one day and I heard these kids who were I of course like my own form of wankster, so I'm clued in, but I had never heard cop as a noun. We used to say cop back in Philly area, like you're gonna cop that, but that all started because I was in Goodwill and I heard this kid. He's like, Jason, is that a cop? So that became the first of those young people voice videos, and it took off. And at the time, I was so old beyond my years and not familiar with TikTok. I didn't know about audio and people using audio. So I started like hearing my audio in all these videos, and I'm like, damn, they stealing. They out here thieving like James Caan. Be original. And then people are like, no, that's good for you. People are using your audio. I'm like, oh fuck. I'll try to settle down. But what did happen was people took the audio without crediting, and then it just started showing up in thousands of videos. And you have to understand how Twilight Zoney that is to open TikTok and just like see someone you don't know and then hear your voice. And I'm like, and then there's no credit. And that video has like 200K likes. And I'd pop in the comments kind of as a dick and be like, yo, credit me. And then people are like, shut up, loser. It's kind of crazy with this younger generation that like you everything's up for grabs, and like when you've created as an original your whole life, you can't have pride in that or defend that. It's just like all open source. It's sick. You're sick. Young people, you're demented. And I've tried and I want to be helpful in ways that I can. um, But yeah, so the young people videos took off, and I started doing the videos in Ross and TJ Maxx and Burlington where I'd make fun of the items and do the cashier voice. And it was just a way of like joke writing about these specific things in my wheelhouse and doing my voices for like the characters. And then I started the fashion guy videos where I make up fashion brands and I'm like inconspicuous clit doing the fit checks. This is all in my wheelhouse shit, and those series is hit. And then TikTok went up. And then the moment I monetized on TikTok, they were like, "You're dumb, bro. We're cutting the views dramatically, and we're shadow banning your ass." But then fortunately, like Instagram followed soon thereafter. So all of a sudden, I went from like no following to like 60K on Instagram. And I'm working at a bakery at the time. And that's when strangers started saying things. And it's different in Chicago, like, enormous city, but has the feeling of a big town. And I loved that about Chicago. So when people see you there and recognize you, they're thrilled to see you. And that's what clued me into, oh my God, I'm reaching all kinds of people. Because it'd be like a kid putting his phone in my face, like, is this you? To like a 50-year-old couple. And the wife would be like, my husband loves your videos. And when that began happening, I'm at this bakery. I used to cry. I used to go in the back with the pastry team and shed a tear of gratitude because I'm like, I've been doing this forever, and there's finally signs it's reaching people. Um, Jump into relationship did not work out. I'm now on my own in Chicago. Like, what am I doing? I moved into this sublet. I call it the sublet from hell, the roach-filled dump. They did not disclose the horrible German cockroach infestation, but I'm a guy essentially fresh off a divorce, a 4-year relationship where I had everything invested. We owned a place together. I didn't get a dime back. That's neither here nor there. But now I'm alone in an apartment, depressed, seeing roaches every day, going nuts, doing everything I can, calling the building. Hey, they'd send the roach man out and he'd gaslight me. He'd be like, I don't see any signs of activity. I'm like, you're telling me I'm seeing roaches throughout the day, every day. Anyhow, and meanwhile, I have this audience at the time. And my friends who are more money minded, maybe not, they're not so much on the creative end. They're like, this is how you monetize, this is how you make X dollars. I got them in my ear and they're like, Gursky, I don't think you realize what you've built. I don't think you realize like your fans. I don't think you realize how much money you should be making right now. And I've done this forever for no money. And more recently, I had to leave that broke shit alone and step out of this pauper artist mindset. But, that again, similarly to the comments of like, why aren't you huge? Gursky, why aren't you a household name? It becomes unhelpful and a little bit demoralizing and dispiriting and synonyms. So I'm in Chicago at the time, and I loved Chicago, but there was so much there tied into what was, where I'm like, I need to get out of here. And I wanted to go to New York and be closer to my family, because in New York, I'd be just an hour and 15 minutes from my sisters, my father, however I may feel about them. I needed love, familiarity, closeness at the time. And I had an old buddy who was like, Gursk, you got so much going on. You got this audience. You got people hitting you up in LA about opportunities. Come out. And I was grateful for the guy. There was a warm door open. So I didn't want to come to LA. I did this in 2016 and it ended in dark fashion. And that may have been regarding my mind, but um I had closed to me like it was over in LA a while ago. It really was. And I'm like, I know the state of Hollywood. I pay attention to it all. I'm like, it's not there for me, but I needed to go somewhere that was a hub of comedic and entertainment opportunity. And I couldn't afford to just go to New York, and, no one else was offering me anything. So I sold so much and scraped together what I had, and I dipped out of that roach dump, and I rented a vehicle, and I drove out to LA in a matter of days. And that's a story. That's a story. Let me tell you, night one on that drive, I thought I was going to make it further than I was, but I started getting tired. And as I'm driving, I'm looking for any like town exit to stop in and find a place to sleep. And I see a sign for Pleasant Hill, Iowa. And I thought, oh, it has Pleasant in the name. That's probably it's probably not half bad. But what you learn is from neighborhoods to towns, anything that sounds quaint and peaceful is anything but that. There's a part of North Philly called Nice Town. Couldn't be further. Couldn't be further from nice. So I very soon learned my lesson about Pleasant Hill, Iowa. But it's now like 2 in the morning, and I'm tired as shit. And to enter this town, it's kind of just like a small highway going down a hill. And I'm going down this highway, this bridge, and I'm like, there's an awful lot of children on bicycles on the highway at night. And as I look more closely, I'm like, oh, these aren't children. These are meth heads on bicycles. You know how, like, a methy guy with, like, his hood up, it can kind of look like a little boy. But I'm like, oh, my God, this is all meth heads. And then a town like that, middle America, that should be, like, all shut down. Like, they shutter their doors at, like, 6 p.m. in the hope that, like, he who walks behind the rose doesn't come out. This place was jumping at 2 in the morning. And their only businesses are like, it's like tattoo shop, vape shop, check cashing, laundromat, another tattoo shop. Everything's open. And I'm seeing literal streetwalkers. No offense, but I'm talking like trans fishnet stockings, like walking up and down the block. And I'm like, oh my God, get me out of Pleasant Hill, Iowa. And even though I was about to fall asleep, like nothing will wake you up and motivate you to keep going, like fearing for your life. So I kept going. Then I got to LA, and that's almost 2 years ago at this point. And this is the big part of discussion here. Excuse me. When I moved to Los Angeles as a young man, 24 years old, back in 2016, I was more naive. I was young and naive. And I felt an electric energy at that time, unlike anywhere else. Philly has its own passion and electricity, but that's for different reasons. That's like every day I'd go out in Philly and be harassed or come upon a story, and I'd come home with material. But when I came to LA in 2016, I remembered that feeling of arrival, and that's because I just wanted to write for shows and comedic act, and it's like at the time Hollywood wasn't quite the shell that it is now. It was getting there, but I'm like, this is where I always wanted to be. And I'm going to get to play characters, and I'm going to get to write for shit. And yeah, it was an unforgettable, invigorating feeling. And coming back 2 years ago, I learned that a lot of my drive was just trying to escape where I was, those feelings of like, man, everything in Chicago, even though it's my favorite city, I'm like, that was all based on another person and not my life, and that's what I was running from. I wasn't racing to LA, I was escaping. And I've done a lot of running in my life. From what we haven't discerned yet, myself. But here's where we're getting into the main discussion I wanted to do. Um, and look, you can make fun of me. You can have your own opinions. I'm just telling you what it is. And again, you don't have to judge me for being like a guy who believes in God and has like never strayed from that and always tried to put good energy out there. And even though as a younger man, I was more one to hold on because I couldn't understand people who were not on the same emotional wavelength as me, people who didn't look as sentimentally at friendships, memories. I used to have a very hard time when like someone who you thought was close to would wrong you or just be gone. So I used to do more holding on. And not to like a vindictive point where I'm like, Paul Kersey out there, but I'm just telling you, like I'm a man who's been in tune, and I've tried to walk in light and put good out there, even when I've been terribly alone, and spent every holiday of my adult life alone, and not just alone, like not with friends. I'm talking like an Easter in Denver alone, having ramen because I can't afford anything else for myself. I will not forget this feeling, and I haven't shaken it. But when I'm coming down the mountain on whatever highway it is, pulling into LA, when you like finally see the city, my heart sunk. I felt energy siphon right from me, and I felt a looming darkness. And not to be a spiritual goof who's waving an amethyst in front of you trying to remove gaslighting spirits. I'm just telling you, as a guy who's in tune, who listens to his gut, who's been around, who's lived a lot of places, met a lot of people, worked like 30 jobs in customer service, met all kinds, smiled and laughed through it all. I will not forget pulling into LA 2 years ago and how it was like a wave of darkness hit me. And I'm like, oh, this is bad. This is bad. There is there is a dark weight looming, and it immediately drained me. And God said, "My, I almost turned back. I almost turned the fuck back." And I'm like, I don't know where I'm gonna go. I don't have a home or very much money, but maybe I'll just go back to Chicago and figure something out. Maybe hopefully stay with a buddy or something. I I just felt it right away. And if you're if you like grew up here, you're from here, your family's here, you have a different experience and a different read and not quite the same perspective. So save it. Save that shit and save any conspiracy shit, save the Christian shit. I'm not Christian. I love God and I love trying to do the right thing. And I love trying to create with genuine good intention. But I won't forget how it sank in that darkness, and day one I was like, I think you gotta go. And this doesn't help for the sake of manifesting or being present, even just mindfully creating good where you are. I feel like I've had this foot out the door. And I'm not going to tell you about the move-in experience and like who I moved in with and shit. There was a disastrous kind of roommate situation, and I don't trust that he's not still watching or like keeping an eye on me, so I'm not going to say shit about that. But from the very feel of the atmosphere to like who I was met with, it was like, oh my God, your energy, your good energy is being pulled from you. And I'm not self-victimizing. I have tried here. I took jobs that I needed to. Again, I moved here without a car, which is fucking stupid. It's fucking stupid. But at all these points, making these moves, like investing in relationships that don't work, I I haven't had like the wherewithal to just be like, I'm getting me a beater vehicle. I haven't been smart with money. Um, so I got a job at the Goodwill down the street from my apartment because I'm like, oh, I can walk there. And I was managing a Goodwill. Also, another story for another day. Being a 32-year-old man, managing an entire Goodwill storefront and some really wonderful employees. But, like, I'm trying to lead. I'm trying to lead a team of like developmentally disabled people and ex felons, and I related to and connected with a lot of people, and we had fun, we had good conversations, but you're also dealing with a company that's malevolent, that does not give a shit about these people. And I tried to do the right thing for customers, I tried to do the right thing for my team, and I dealt with all kinds of shit I should not have. And some of the most you can imagine the frequent Goodwill shoppers in Los Angeles and what I had to deal with. We'll save it for another fucking pod. Um, and immediately when I started there, like the other employees were like, Michael, you're too nice to the customers. They're going to take advantage of you. I'm like, okay, I can handle myself. They were right. It was like, so now I'm in this city where I'm uncomfortable and I'm barely getting by. And some opportunities I came out for did not materialize. Um, and then I'm going to this job it's bleak and dark in there, and you got customers treating you like shit, and you're trying to be good to your team, and like it's almost like the company itself, the Goodwill's telling you not to be. It's pretty sick. And now we're jumping to the last 2 months. The fires happened, as you know, and a lot shook up for me then. A lot shook up for me then. It was like a lot of forced change, as I mentioned. Not by my own doing. I lost like the work I was doing, and it's not ideal work, like cafe shit, just to get by. But they gradually were just like quietly not giving me hours anymore, and I'm like, hey, I worked my ass off for you guys. I showed up and worked the shitty shifts. This is my own fault. I always thought there was good in being the most hardworking guy you could. And after 17 years or something in customer service in all over the country, Philly, Denver, Chicago, LA, I have dealt with it all. And you know what I've done? I've like smiled and continued to be nice to people who are assholes, and sometimes I get in that bitter don't you know who I am mindset when someone's like being a dickhead to me, and I'm like, do you know what the fuck I do and what I make and shit? Like, and I've refrained from that. I did start developing a slight ego like last year. I'll admit this, and I should probably speak on it. When I blew up, when my audience blew up in when I was working at a bakery in Chicago, I was like a humble, grateful guy, and I would shed tears over all the recognized moments. As hard as it was, when people would be like, "Dude, you're like the funniest guy I've seen on Instagram. You're going places." I'm like, "Thank you, buddy. You said 2 blueberry scones," and then I'd bag up their pastries. But I was like humble and maybe not even fully believing in myself just yet. But then I'm working at this cafe in LA, and suddenly like the recognition's every day, and it's not the like Chicago crowd. A lot of it's like people who are trying to big time you, you know? So like, Gursky, what up? What are you doing here? I'm like, you know me, I don't know you. And now I will say this, many are very nice. It's that was encouraging. But like the type of people who are recognizing you out here, these hip people, very hip. I did kind of start, some entitlement started seeping back in me. And I started getting an ego. But at the time, I'm going through shit. I'm at this cafe job, wearing myself out, was dealing with some personal things. I strayed from the videos for a while, the TikToks and Reels, and nothing was paining me more than that. I'm like, oh my God, my energy's going to relationships that are not working. My energy's going to a job that does not appreciate and reward me. I'm not putting any of I have no energy left to put into what I do. And this shakeup the last 2 months, that is one of those blessings in disguise that doesn't appear that way. Where it's like I've had no choice but to like go all in. And I mean and in a risky way. Because I've been starving for 2 months. My diet has had to change because I can't afford anything. I haven't gone a day without stomach issues. My nervous system's shot. I'm sweating every night with financial worry. But I know what's coming. I know what's there. That becomes difficult to do. And then you're putting every energy. Sometimes it's taking every bit of you every day just to get up and like make a video. Because I don't create. I'm not like scheduling. I make 3 videos today and we cash out on these trends. I I don't know how to describe the way I create, and it's hard to do so without sounding like a pompous ass. Where I'm like I create artfully, but like I gotta have the right energy when I'm doing a bit and be having fun with it, and like get into character. I play characters. I'm not one of these guys who just puts on a costume and then doesn't act. I'm bewildered by this. Like a lot of these big guys, I'm like this is lazy. There's so much laziness and fear of committing because people in comedy want to be like cool and hot. And not to get insane here, but I've always been of the belief you can choose to be a comedian and funny, or you can be cool and hot. Sometimes, hey, it's just a byproduct for me. Sorry. I can't help. I can't help what I am. But creating comedy and trying to be funny is inherently embarrassing. I accepted that a long time ago. So I know what I'm doing is embarrassing. When I'm in a bedroom with like my cam set up and I'm changing outfits to play different characters and I'm like committing to the character and really acting, that is in itself cringe, as people say. I hate that one. But that's what it is. And I think a lot of people are afraid to do that. They're afraid to commit. They're afraid to look cringe. And I'm like, I'm sorry, it's not going to be authentic. It's not, you can't be cool guy, half assing it, like kind of playing a character, even though that seems to work. I come from a different world, different time before my years. I just watched 60s, 70s, and 80s shit. I'm out of touch. I grew up with abnormally old parents. That played a role. But yeah, I it takes a lot for me sometimes to just do these bits because I got to be in the right mind space. And that's difficult when I don't know how I'm going to eat. And it's even more difficult when I'm just being real with you. I'm not talking shit on LA cuz like LA people like hate this, but like I don't know if they're naive, if they're lost, if they're unconscious. Again, hate to use words like this, but for me, sometimes when I go anywhere, it could be a coffee shop, it could be the grocery store. I I've gotten over anxious things and I show up in good spirits, but sometimes just going into a coffee shop here or like traveling to get there, I feel I'm like it feels hectic and crazy, the energy. It shifts from a state of calm to hectic and crazy. And you feel the way everyone's like looking around, staring. They're looking to see who's looking at them because they're like, I wonder if people think I'm cool and hot. That fucking drains me. And when people are staring at me and like this isn't this isn't arrogant. I just know from over the years all the people who say things to me in public, I know people are looking at me and they know me. From the shoe videos, the Timu shoe roasts or whatever it may be. And it used to be like at the job where you're in a customer service atmosphere, you're you have to be approachable and you're talking to people. So that's like in line every day customers would be like, "You do the shoe roasts?" And people would say something. But now I walk around and people just stare. And some of it might be like, "Look at that odd-looking guy. Look at this fucking goof." Or some of it is, I know that guy and like I'm not saying anything. And like it'd be way more comfortable for me if you said something. And then there's the people who, look, here's the fact of the matter. If you put yourself out there, you just got to accept this. I had to accept it years ago because I've been putting myself out there the better part of my life. But when I blew up on TikTok, I started to accept, oh my God, there are people who are forced to see me and they hate it. They're like, I hate seeing this fucking guy. I know that because I've been forced to see people who I'm like, this guy sucks. It's not funny. I wish the app wouldn't show me him. And I'm sure I've been that person for people. So you also, like you have to be aware there's people who go out who see you and they're like, I've seen that guy and I don't like him for no reason other than I've been forced to see him and I don't think he's funny. But like, I'm not going out wishing anyone ill. I'm just like, I keep to myself and I try to be polite and kind. But whether it's the people, the spirit here, impending things, it's just, it kills my spirit every day. And sometimes you can't afford to live somewhere, let alone leave. And now I'm in a relationship that I'm deeply in love and ready for the future. I'm in this. But, I can't up and go somewhere because I'm with someone else. And I have accepted, like, you gotta be here for now. And you gotta put the best out there. But I think you understand what I mean, where it's like some days, so much as leaving the house here, I'm like, why am I tired? Why am I stressed? All I did was get in the car and go somewhere to get some food. And I'm tired and stressed now. Take that as you will. I'm not going to give my interpretations. And I've missed, when I was skimming over everything, there's so many of these chapters where I'm like, I have endless good stories for you from those chapters. This was like the overview because people ask me questions and don't know things, and they just see a guy who does these shoe roasts or does the kids' voices and like raps as the kids and does these silly, embarrassing bits. But I have not been candid really about much of anything. And it was time. And I thought we'd get raw for this run. I thought we'd fucking remove the glove and just hit it like that. I thought we'd make it clap in this manner. And also, not again to get, not to get spiritual on your asses, but like, I felt kind of God telling me, like, dude, you can still do all your bits, but you can also you can tell your story and be you. Because my story is even wild beyond what I've described here. Yeah, and I'm in this place currently. I got love in my life, and I have a few friends who care. Um, I've had a lot of friends I've had to let go of, or like they let go of me. Because as I mentioned earlier, sometimes it's like the people close to you who are like really odd, wishing weird shit, and I know who they is. I know exactly who they is. Don't think I don't know. Some of you are watching right now. I know. I understand envy. I understand when you have no motion and you're bitter. I've been there. I've been through every saga of this shit, bitch. But I just wanted the love of family lately, and I think that's getting better. But I don't have a lot of people. I certainly don't have family here, and